But nice to just acknowledge that we are standing where blackfellas were looking after the country for probably 50,000 years. I find that pretty incomprehensible. I've had a share on a hippie commune for 30 years, and I'm just getting to know the country. And I love that I'm getting to know it. And I just imagine, if you were here for 30,000 years, you'd know every rock. You'd know every tree, you'd know it so well. And it's just extraordinary that us white fellas came here and just couldn't get it, didn't see it, trampled it. So, acknowledgement to their efforts for a long time before we got here. And I really don't got nothing much more to welcome you to MardiGrass about. Read the programs, be fussy about it, and find what you want to see and don't miss it, or what you want to listen to. It's a really full program. And I'm kicking it off here with my good friend, Miss Guidance.
Greetings to MardiGrass. I hope it's not going to be muddy grass.
Yeah. So just to fill you in before we talk about our trip away, she has changed my life. It was chaos in the hemp embassy until Miss Guidance came along, and she's totally organised me. And this Hemposium is all her work. It is. It is.
But I might point out you are thanking someone called Miss Guidance.
Miss Guidance. Yes. So she's a perfect guider. So we were really lucky to get this invitation to go and be a judge in the M.O.M Cannabis Cup in Vancouver a couple of months ago now.
Back in February, March.
Yeah, and the M.O.M Cup is mail order marijuana. So it was a cup in Vancouver specifically about people who did mail order weed, which not many people are doing in Australia, but a few people. And we couldn't quite be as open as them.
Yeah, it was a pretty amazing event, wasn't it, Michael? About 300 people came dedicated to checking out. Dedicated to checking out some really excellent weed. It was a great privilege for us and a lot of excitement to. Should I get away from here? Okay, sorry. It was a lot of excitement for us because we got a bit of a glimpse into a really passionate, happening cannabis culture. And the level of expertise and really excellence in what people were presenting to us was really out there. It was really great, wasn't it?
And Asia May, who sent us the tickets, is here and talking in an hour or two in this hall, has come from Vancouver, and she's an amazing, dynamic, not so young woman. I would call she looks young, she looks fantastic, who was born, I'm not even going to go into it. I was famous for saying, this is an amazing woman who was born with her feet backwards, who went through shocking operations, got addicted to opiates, and then weaned herself off the opiates totally, and is now just a major advocate for medical cannabis and runs an online dispensary. She's a pretty amazing woman. She's talking here in an hour or so.
Yeah, definitely come and listen to her because she's had big experiences now with dealing, even in Canada where dispensaries are allowed and people do have, there is a cannabis industry, there's still a lot of persecution and prosecution against families that choose to go that path. Just quickly, one of the amazing things we saw at this cup was a thing called Cannagar. So basically it's like these meticulous handcrafted cigar type things that are made totally from cannabis. So it was from flour and resin and rolled in cannabis leaves, and they were quite a mighty puff. And what they basically retailed for $300, but it was like something you'd take to a party and you'd be very, very popular all evening. Anyway, so that was just an example of, like, I guess the excellence and the standard of cannabis culture there, because you will not see anything like this here at MardiGrass. We're still struggling, of course, to simply get laws changed. And once they are, people can really, in some ways, blossom and really show what a great culture cannabis can generate. It's almost like the aspect of cannabis making you, get a good buzz and get some great ideas happening, and then you can come up with some great business ideas as well.
So the cannagars are these big fat joints with nothing but cannabis in them. They use leaves, but then they glue it all together with oil. Pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Takes them all day. You always spend 2 days rolling this joint.
So a perfect job really for a stoner.
Yeah.
This is just some. So the M.O.M Cup also had lots of. They had like a conference like we are. They had lots of speakers from. There were us from Australia and then people from the US as well, and as well as all around Canada. So there was pretty much the cream of people doing some amazing stuff, including glass art. So once again, I don't know. I know in Australia it's only fledgling, but certainly in North America. The type of art that people are making when it comes to bongs is quite incredible. It's, they're art pieces. They deserve to be in art galleries.
Glass is a big industry in the cannabis culture over there. Really big industry.
And then here's the dab bar. So that was a lot of fun. It was basically like, I guess, a drinking bar, except they had... Within the bar itself, set up all sorts of e-nail devices where you could, and they basically did the dab for you, you just sucked on it. So that was part of the CD fun there as well.
So for people who don't get that, it's a concentration of the THC and the cannabinoids, if you like, that comes out into a resin form. So when I smoke a joint, I like smoking joints, but you take in a lot of other stuff. Whereas this is probably a very cleanest, most efficient way to get the effect without taking on board all the other stuff.
Yeah, so recreationally it really packs a punch. Even if you're a seasoned consumer of cannabis, like really one dab was enough for many hours. However, people indeed with medical sort of uses also find them very helpful because, as you say, they're it's like one quick hit and you're done for a while.
It's a lot less smoke you're taking on.
Oh, and then there was cabaret. So, once again, I'll get you to talk about the dude. But first of all, there was lots of great entertainment, like MardiGrass does for Bride. But it was like, I guess I'd call it like punk burlesque, all sorts of weird circus performers, all sorts of weird girls taking their clothes off. And then we got to the man who took his clothes off. So, Michael, you have to talk about the...
So you saw him first. He's sitting up the back of the crowd, this perfectly dressed Mountie. In all his gear, and we're thinking, what's going on here? He had this immaculate Mountie suit, and he came out, and he was in love with Pierre Trudeau.
No, Justin.
Justin Trudeau. So that's his old man.
He's the Prime Minister of Canada.
So that's the picture of Justin there, and he was quite in love with him, and for a while there I wasn't sure what he was going to do, and he pulled this huge joint out of his pants and lit it up, but then he proceeded to pull his huge donger out of his pants and did a portrait of the Prime Minister with his penis, and it was massive. The portrait and his penis.
Actually, Michael, we forgot to warn people that this talk is probably X-rated.
It is X-rated.
So if you're bothered, you should probably leave now.
It was pretty extraordinary.
It was amazing. I've never seen anything like it. But when I came back to Australia and started telling people about the penis painter, I heard that there's other people in Australia who do.
No one had a penis as big as this one, I tell you, mate. The bloke slunk out of the room.
Anyway, it's a really good job.
There's the painting. It was pretty impressive. Anyway, it was pretty amazing. No women left the room.
Stanley Park we're up to.
Stanley Park. Look, some of you might have been to Vancouver. It's got a huge national park right next to the city on the harbour edge, on the edge of the sea. And we had a fantastic day walking through there. It was massive. You could get lost in there totally. And some beautiful, huge old trees that have seen better days. But you get a feeling of this is right next to the city. I was really impressed. A lot of great sculptures. We're into art in Nimbin, and I thought these were impressive. That's Essie Thomas, who's singing after the rally on Sunday, I think I'm right. And there was a dozen or 15 of these figures just laughing. Everyone was laughing. It was a very positive sculpture, I thought. And the one on the right is, I saw this massive building called spud.ca. And I'm thinking, what's all that about? Anyway, they did deliveries of organic veggies, not just veggies. I think you could give them any shopping list you liked. They'd deliver it, everything totally organic. Organics was big over there. Anyway, I thought I'll go and look in the building, see where they're packing it up. It was just all people on computers doing orders. It was a huge industry, and for me, organics is a big thing. We just see so many people with cancer coming here now hoping for treatment, and I reckon in time we're going to realise the chemicals in our whole food chain are going to be shown to be a big part of that.
And then we also privileged to visit the Museum of Anthropology at the University of British Columbia. So once again, that was thanks to Sita, who's visited this weekend as well. So extraordinary collection of basically artefacts from native peoples from all around the world. And you can see these totem poles here. They were huge.
They were massive.
It was amazing.
They were massive. They were massive, taller than in this room. Taller than in the town hall, these massive totem poles. And they were in quite good nick, and they brought a lot of them into this giant glass museum. It was a terrific museum. And Sita, who took us there, is here also. And people tell me Sita is the suppository expert from Canada. There's something for you. She's been making medicine and healing people for 30 or 40 years. So look out for her here this weekend.
Yep. So she's going to be doing a demo in the hall tomorrow afternoon.
Suppository demo? No, not demo suppositories.
Michael, you're ruining our surprise.
Sorry,
No, she's going to be doing using basically hemp roots
or cannabis roots to make balms and things like that. She's also on Sunday at Disco Sisters tent at 1 o'clock. Indeed, going to do a suppository demo. So I'll leave it at
Making suppositories, not inserting them.
Though we have heard it's one of the most effective ways of consuming cannabis. Talk about the homelessness.
Yeah, I think on the second day there we walked into town. It was a long walk, probably 10 kilometres. And as we got close to the city of Vancouver, we started feeling a bit like Nimbin of old. There were lots of street people, deros, addicts, and they got thicker and thicker until there was a huge mob of them, which we came to call the Crow people. That was actually in the footpath near there. It was an extraordinary scene. So how many overdoses in Canada last year?
I'm sorry, I can't remember. A lot.
Yeah. It was 1,000. I think it was 1,000. Because, we're talking Vancouver, less than 1 million people, so 1,000 overdoses on the street. And the Prime Minister was actually there, concerned about it. And he's promising to legalise bud next year, his words. He promises to legalise bud next year, to take it away from the money-making of criminal gangs and to keep children out of the black market. But the addict scene of not ice like we've got here, more crack and heroin and fentanyl, killing a lot of people, like 40 people died in one day when we were there. So 1,000 overdoses a year is more than Australia's ever had in a year, ever. Way more. I think we got up to 700 or 800 or 900 once 10 or 15 years ago. It was a big scene on the street, a lot of addicted people. So, we were shocked.
Yeah, it was like suddenly we had wandered into the wrong side of town.
Yeah, mate, I was hanging onto my wallet. Everyone dressed in black.
Everyone's in black. It looked like a scene out of Mad Max or something. It was pretty...
Open dealing. There were people openly dealing, I could see. And the police sort of stayed away. And they were corralled into a few blocks. It was a huge scene, impossible for the police. Ambulances kept coming in and out. It was pretty spooky. I didn't expect it at all.
And mind you, it was really concentrated in just one small area. And then if you just sort of went around the corner, you were back into the shiny shopping malls and people with money again. So, anyway, or people that spend their money on other things anyway. Let's get back to the cannabis anyway. Yes, so Mark Emery is a very famous guy in Canada. He started the cannabis culture. I guess it's a bit of a chain now because he's got dispensaries and head shops all over the country. What was exciting for us, being from this, from the outpost of Australia, was that he actually also had a cannabis lounge. So it was a three-story building. So the bottom was the shop, And then the next 2 stories up was basically a lovely lounge where you could go and hang out and consume cannabis. And they had vapes and they had dab equipment. They had all sorts of, they had rolling papers. They had everything to help you consume.
You could hire any machine to inhale.
Just bring your own bud.
Yeah.
And you could buy lots of course, sugar and that kind of junk food. There wasn't much consciousness in this scene of anything healthy, really, was there?
No, it's interesting. There wasn't really. It was just a big smoking lounge. One of them sold pot and one didn't. And people paid $5 and they brought their own weed and they'd just come with their mates and have a big session and amongst other people. Because one of the big things in both the American states we visited, Washington State and Oregon, was you couldn't smoke publicly. There was no public consumption of cannabis anywhere. And that will change, I think, talking to people. So his lounges were really popular.
Yeah, I think, remember in Vancouver we were told that we could just go and light up somewhere, but just not to do it discreetly.
Yeah, nowhere near any children's playgrounds or kindergartens. That was a big issue. You weren't allowed to be near kids' places at all.
Though you'd wonder how children would know the difference between whether you're smoking a cigarette or a joint. But anyway, we won't go into that. No. So basically, in Vancouver in particular, there is a medical cannabis legal industry. However, from what we discovered by going to a lot of these dispensaries, and this is probably the biggest proponent, this one, as in he's right out there, is they pretend they're medical, so you go in and say you've got a sore back and then you can buy cannabis. So it's really recreational happening, pretending to be medical. And so to us, I think it's important that there's definitely a distinction between those 2 industries, because people who have medical conditions that they seriously need to treat might like a bit more guidance. So one dispensary we went to had a doctor on site, right?
Only one.
Only one. So all the others were really for people that wanted to enjoy themselves, which is great. But at the moment, they've got to pretend they're medical to be able to remain open. And then on top of that, I think it was this time last year, the government suddenly introduced a $30,000 licensing fee. So as a consequence, only some of the dispensaries had done that, and many of them were still operating without the licensing fee paid. So what, they were getting fines?
They were getting $1,000 fines, $1,000 a week, which they seem to just keep dealing weed.
This is just a bit more of cannabis culture. Overgrow the government, which is a bit of a slogan that we've taken up as well this year. That's inside their head shop.
Mark Emery had 5 years in an American jail, and he got out for selling seeds, wasn't it? And he got out a couple of years ago, and he's just gone gung-ho ever since, opening these cannabis culture places everywhere, getting raided, big network of lawyers keeping him out of jail. It's quite a pushy, strong scene.
Yeah, he's basically not pretending it's medical. So that's interesting. There's a bit of the menu at the cannabis culture. There you go. You could actually buy some... I see. It's cannabis-infused edibles, and though there's dabs, concentrates you can buy there as well. I didn't realise that.
There was absolutely every type of thing that you could get cannabis into for sale. There were drinks, lollies, chocolates, every kind of thing, as well as to smoke or dab or get in an oil or resin form or hash form. I still think most people bought buds and took them home to smoke. And if you don't realise why that's so popular, it's because you can feel the effect straight away. The smoke will go straight through your lungs into your bloodstream. So I can smoke a joint now, and after a few tokes, I'm going to realise, that's enough. Whereas if you eat it, you've got to wait an hour, and it might be too much or too little. So I reckon most people were smoking, although experienced people were eating and drinking, and in every form you could imagine.
It was really interesting. Also, the people who were working in these places were generally, 20-somethings?
Yeah.
So the cannabis industry, not only in Canada but also in North America, is definitely employing a lot of young people who would otherwise not be employed probably. Some of them are a bit too cool.
I wrote to our employment minister, whoever he is, this a few years back, I wrote to him saying, "Hemployment, mate, you don't get it. There are thousands of people across Australia on the dole next to their bong and computer. And, you know, the one job they will do is grow some pot. So it was really evident in America and Canada that all these young people who did like smoking pot were employed in the industry. It was huge.
Yeah, and many of them are passionate experts in their own right. We met young guys who were growers and knew heaps of stuff. We actually met a young guy who's grown up in this area who has gone to Canada so he can work in the pot industry.
You know why he left? He left because he was scared of losing his licence. It's a big issue here. If you're a regular cannabis user, you risk losing your licence with the saliva testing. That drove him away to Canada.
Yeah. And even though definitely during MardiGrass the RDTs are set up, this particular part of the country really gets hassled very regularly. It's very difficult driving around here, really. Okay, next is Tasmania.
Yeah, this is a photo. It was a newspaper article on the wall in Cannabis Culture, which fascinated me. So that farmer up there is the Tassie farmer holding the cup for the best opium crop. Check him out. He really doesn't quite know what he's done, but he's done it. The whole Tasmanian crop, you know, of opium is contracted to 2 American pharmaceutical companies and makes more than half the legal pharmaceutical opiates like Oxycontin, Endone, etc. We're growing the crop.
Tasmania, drug lords. Here, the next few slides are just going to show pictures of some of the cannabis dispensaries. So you can see they're kind of regular looking little stores.
They were really clean.
Yeah, very clean. Some of them
They
very
get
minimalist.
health inspectors all the time. And they were super clean. They were like chemists, but they smelt way better.
Here's a cannabis vending machine that was in one of the dispensaries. A few of the dispensaries had vending machines. I guess that meant you could just walk in and not talk to anyone and just get something.
$5 a gram.
Yeah.
So weed went from, we saw $99 ounces, but weed went from $5 or $3 a gram to even as close to $20 a gram for the really elite bits, but averaged around $10 a gram, which is similar to Australia.
Yeah, similar to the black markets.
Yeah.
Anyway, $99 ounces was awesome. It was a pity we weren't there longer. The place on the right that says Real Compassion, that was the one dispensary that was in the middle of Badsville that we ran into. And it was, unlike the other dispensaries, it had like a big black door, and you knocked on it and the guy opened the latch and then you got in. So it was a bit more hardcore in that area. However, just around the corner was the Cannabis Culture, and next door to it the Amsterdam Cafe, which is the longest running cannabis cafe in Vancouver. Michael, was it 25 years or something?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Sita in her bio says that she was part of the beginning of that.
Yeah.
So once again, one of our guests here from Canada was part of the beginning. The Amsterdam Cafe was indeed a lovely cafe. They had like a lounge downstairs that you could consume cannabis during the day, and in the evening upstairs you could smoke as well. So once again, I don't know, there was big scenes happening, and the police don't really take much notice of it. Heaps of billboard advertising, not just in Vancouver but in Seattle. So there's weed maps. They were all around the place as well. It was just this particular spot where we caught it.
There were heaps of them, heaps of these giant billboards floating in the air.
Yeah, we'll have a few more of those. This is just, I don't know, coming from Australia, we don't have these big mountains. So it was really beautiful to see these beautiful snow-covered mountains anyway. That was near where we live. Aha! So, of course, just because we were there, they put on an anti-Trump demonstration. There's a Trump tower in Vancouver, and I believe it was Trump's son had come for some kind of opening, so there was a big bunch of people turned out. There's Michael chatting to Donald.
I thought that was Donald, and I had quite a chat to him. I thought I'm doing well, but it wasn't.
And
that's a dispensary.
Yes.
So that's the front window of a dispensary, like emphasising ordinary people use cannabis. And you went inside, and it had one whole wall was a massive cannabis crop photo. But they were so normal so just part of everyday life. It was no big deal. And I honestly thought in Australia it would be just no big deal. The government tomorrow said, yep, okay, we'll license dispensaries. They just open up. No big deal. It is just no big deal at all. We just got vested interest in the way of it happening, really, you know.
Yeah, it takes a lot to reverse sort of ingrained sort of propaganda as well.
That's what it is. We've been lied to. Basically,
for a long time.
reefer madness lies for 80-odd years are hard to undo.
The other thing about this, the Pain Management Society, the Cannabis Treatment Centre was at the back. They also had a smoking lounge. But I must say that the aesthetic or the style there wasn't so nice. It was like really bright lights and... yeah, it wasn't very pleasant. And I think they were kind of... that's right, we were there at the wrong time, weren't we? Do you remember? Yeah, that's right.
They wanted evening. They were different in the evening.
That's right, yeah. So this kind of goes a bit when we're talking about with the opioid sort of overdoses. This is actually a picture of an advertisement in a bus shelter. So, and this advertisement is from Health Canada. So to show you the difference between Australia Health and Canadian Health is they will actually admit there's something wrong and they will try to help people on, I guess, the grassroots level to help do something. So this is a kit that you can keep to help make sure that your buddy or your relative or whatever doesn't die of an opiate overdose. Because the reality is there are a lot of people doing that.
Yeah. Just quickly, so I was interested in how cannabis law reform came about, or this compassionate attitude to drug use came about in Vancouver, and it was the senior cop, maybe 20 years ago, the chief cop, set up a system where compassion was a priority. He then became the mayor of Vancouver, and he's now become a senator in their federal government. But it was kicked off by the police, and the police know better than anyone what's going out there with drug use. So it's really distasteful for me that in Australia very little support ever comes from the police to make changes. And also in America, an organisation called LEAP, Law Enforcement Against Prohibition, is huge, 5,000 or 10,000 members. They had a big impact on changing the laws in America. In Australia, I think LEAP's got 2 members.
And one of them's here at MardiGrass.
Yeah, I think they're both here. They're both Nimbin hippies that worked for the government once.
So we went south to Portland. So basically, there is legal recreational cannabis in about 8 or 9 American states now. One of them is Oregon. Portland is the capital, I think. And then the other state is, one of the other states is Washington State. So we went to Seattle as well. This part of the US, and there's California further south, is known as the left coast because I guess essentially it's a more progressive part of the United States where there's a lot more interest in human rights and all sorts of liberties that go with that. And also the other lovely thing about the US, because I've been to Colorado as well, is they don't knock down all of their beautiful old buildings, which Australia loves to do. So the train stations in particular are gorgeous.
And, stunning. They were amazing.
Beautiful,
they were so beautiful, and with all the old furniture in there. They were terrific. Just interestingly, everyone said to us, oh, you won't get into America. You know, they'll Google your name, it'll come up, Nimbin, MardiGrass, and so we caught the train, I think it was 5:30 in the morning. The customs guys were a bit sleepy. They didn't Google our names. It was no big deal at all. We just, we were in.
In fact, we realised we could probably carry things easily in our luggage, but that was just a dream I had. Anyway, but I was going to say, one of the nice things about being, I guess, on a cannabis tourist tour, as we were, was we were basically going where it was legal. So everywhere we went, we could just go, oh, weed maps, where's our closest dispensary, and wander off and go to a lovely shop and buy some buds. How civilised is that? So the other lovely thing about Portland is there were lots of messages, not just in shops, but in people's yards. I think there's a picture coming up of basically saying that we're all very tolerant and that we don't agree with Donald Trump.
Yes, it was anti-Trump stuff. Anti-Trump stuff was strong.
Yeah, we had people apologising to us about Trump. So, I don't know, we didn't really meet any avid Trump supporters. There's no doubt about that.
No.
This is just some of the education in some of the dispensaries we went to. Here were this place, Nectar. I think that was the first one we found, wasn't it? $99 ounces at that.
It was a big obligation we felt, as you know, ambassadors from Australia, to try most of the weed. So they would have had 150 different strains.
Yeah.
So it's pretty exhausting work.
There's another sign that was in a lot of people's front yards. You know, love wins in America. It's really cool.
We're still trying to work out what that was. This is not a trash can.
This is not a trash can. It was a bit of weird art in Mississippi Street.
It was a trash can.
We think.
That's the biggest recycling whatever in America, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was massive. And I was they'd built this huge place. It was in a seedy area of town, which had now become valuable, so they were worth a fortune. People brought them donated goods, and they also wrecked houses. And they built the whole place, we're talking like an acre or two, out of all recycled materials. I was amazed, because I've got trouble buying new stuff. So, it was really impressive, wasn't it? It was huge.
Sorry, I keep thinking there's a few more photos, but we don't want to bore everybody.
It was an old train station turned into a dispensary.
Fire
station. Sorry.
Yeah, that was a dispensary in an old fire station. That was very cool. This is Billy, another dispensary called the Thurman Street Collective in Portland. And they, in their sort of vestibule, sort of front area, they had a beautiful art gallery. On the other side, you can see that. So, and the other thing about this particular place was heaps of retro stuff. It was a very retro store. And then we had Homegrown Apothecary, which probably resembled a bit more the apothecary across the road, that kind of old style thing. And you might notice here all the lovely jars of buds. So a lot of the buds, the flowers are displayed like that in little glass jars, and you can have a smell and have a look and decide.
Smell was nearly enough.
Yeah. So it's another dispensary, proudly saying it's recreational. Some weird art on the left around an ATM.
So I think now we're in America, it wasn't so much money to get a license for a dispensary, and there were actually a lot of them.
That was in Seattle.
In Seattle, there were a lot of them.
So here we are now in Seattle.
Yeah.
So Seattle was
small
actually
ones,
a bit
big
different.
ones.
Yeah. So here we are with a very small dispensary that we almost missed, called Ruckus. You can see there's no mention of cannabis at all. And the thing on the right there is their display inside. So there was a lot of fun kind of surreal stoner stuff going on in these places as well. Now, unlike the other dispensaries in the other states and in Canada, in Seattle they were displaying all these little packets. So, where have I put them? Yeah, so you sort of bought cannabis in things like that.
Little sealed packets.
And they were already hanging up.
And they all had a THC content percentage and CBD. They didn't have a bigger lineup of cannabinoids, but everyone had that marked. And CBD wasn't a big deal. Nearly all the weed was high THC with a small percentage CBD. I felt like CBD was a late arrival on the scene a bit.
Yeah, well, who cares about it if you just want to enjoy yourself, really?
Which most people were after the stoner effect.
That's right. So if you do, so in Seattle, for instance, though, it was already packaged, but in the other places, in Colorado, in Portland, in Vancouver, things were put in little bottles like this, little packets. So when you bought a gram or a couple of grams, you'd get it in one of these, all child-proofed, of course.
They had 3 different licenses, didn't they? So you could get the growing license, the packaging license, and then the dispensary selling license. And you could only have 2 of them. So that was, it was interesting. It was a huge industry. And it was in both American states we went to, it was run by the Alcohol Board, which I found interesting, the Washington State Alcohol and Cannabis Regulation Board. That was interesting. I don't know that I'd like that, but that's...
Yeah, it is interesting, by the way, because Colorado, by the way, doesn't. They have their very own cannabis board. Yeah. So, of course, we're in Seattle in the USA, and what do we discover? A thing called the Nimbin Pot Shop. So the Nimbin brand, guys, is already out there.
It was good. They had a combi in the wall. It totally been inspired. The guy loved Nimbin. Gone over there and opened a dispensary. Yeah. It was quite a big one too.
And there's actually the people at this dispensary are probably the oldest people we met doing stuff.
Yeah.
There's some more stuff. There's a big sign outside. And then that's just, so basically often where dispensaries were located, a lot of others would congregate around them. So we actually went quite a long way out of Seattle. It was near the airport to go to that Nimbin Pot Shop, right, Michael?
Yeah.
And then when we got there, we went, we could see about 6 other dispensaries, so it was
cluster.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And in this particular one, do you remember there was a lady with a hijab?
Yes.
Muslim lady
Yes, there was. Young, there was. See, I think that...
She was buying.
Yeah, and I think dispensaries had certain growers selling to them. So if you found a particular strain you really loved, you'd be a regular at that dispensary. A bit like a boutique pub. You know, I love that beer they're making down there. So there were certain strains, and a lot of people coming in knew, yep, I want that one. They knew they knew what they were coming for.
Yep, and with some of the smaller stores, like just to go back, that one there was a very small store, and they made a big deal about, and so was Ruckus, about how they have very special strains, as opposed to these other shops like the Nimbin Pot Shop or this one that were much bigger. Yeah. They were saying that those packets sit there on those shelves for a long time and they're probably all stale and horrible. So anyway, that was interesting.
You had to be 21. The alcohol's 21 too there, and you had to be 21, and they asked everyone their age, including us.
Oh, well, we had to show our passports as well. That bothers a lot of people, but we managed to get through with that. And here is another store in Seattle, Gunja Goddess. That was pretty funky. And then this one was a totally different style. It was called Vela, and it was basically very minimalist, wasn't it, Michael?
Yeah.
As in it looked like a phone store.
This guy was a total character. If I could show you the movie, he did this total dance, spinning that. He was busking for the dispensary on the street. I think technically you couldn't really advertise, except you could have billboards, it seems. And so he was on the footpath outside, you know, twirling his sign, getting people in. He was very good. That was the Donald Trump lookalike store, wasn't it? Very flashy columns and gold. And
so there's the $2,000 bud. It was as big as your fist. And then,
it looked a bit old. I thought it looked old.
It was very ritzy, this store. It had like tiles and fountains and whatever. And then we went to Dockside Cannabis, which was a lovely store that had a hemp museum as well. So there's really lots of old bottles full of cannabis tincture, guys.
Old tincture bottles and...
Yeah. Once again, the billboard advertising was big, so they're all shots of cannabis advertisements.
We got that shot of the stadium yet?
Yeah, I think that's the last one. Okay, here we go. That's the last one.
You know, I grew up in Victoria, so I've still got that AFL addiction. But this was interesting. They're the two big stadiums in Seattle. You can't see the other one further down a bit like the MCG and Etihad Stadium if you're in Melbourne. So this dispensary was deliberately set up right outside them, and all these people going to the footy on Saturday came and got their joints before they went. I thought, we got a long way to go, haven't we? I was really impressed by that. Well, you know, the football, I grew up in country Victoria, you know, everyone's getting pissed at the footy. It's a whole new ballgame when you go along and smoke.
Right, like, has anyone got any questions? I must admit, we do feel a bit funny talking about Canada and the US when we've got guests from there. So I hope we haven't been too inaccurate. But I guess it's just really a travel log. Yes, Wolf. Yes.
Absolutely. He'd been here, he actually had relatives here, I think, loved Nimbin, inspired by Nimbin. They had combis inside, and now they've got our MardiGrass posters all over it. Do ask questions, pick your hand up. He wasn't there, they were blown out, they loved it. I actually wasn't sure we'd get into America, so we posted them all this stuff early, and then we turned up as well, they were blown out. They thought it was great. Yeah, no, they thought it was great. What Miss Guidance says is very true. Was a lot of young people running the shows, managing them, capable. You know, it really hit me how if you're working in an industry you love, it's not work. I mean, a lot of you all know that. You know, I love working in the hemp embassy. It's no chore for me Monday morning. And I thought all these young people were the same. They were in this industry they loved, they were learning, they were helping people, they felt like their life had meaning. It was impressive. And I look at the unemployment and young people in Australia, the suicide rate in Australia, 8 people a day killing themselves in Australia. It's just shocking. You know, the Aboriginal figures in jail. There are so many things that will change so much if we can get cannabis regulated. We're done. You've got no questions,
Oh no,
you guys?
there's one down the back.
Yell out. I reckon just yell out.
Do you think it's just cannabis that needs to be stopped or from being prohibited, or all drugs? Like we need all our freedom, or?
For me, it's all drugs. I think, you know, I've had 30 years in Nimbin now, and it took me a long time to sort of wake up to it, but Nimbin's been my teacher on this. Just drug use is a health issue. For me, it's boiled down very simply. People take drugs because they want to feel good. They want to have less pain. They want to feel good. You know, I could say God, but it's just a health issue. And how the cops got into it, how big business got into it, banning the best 3 pain-killing plants on the planet, the opium, poppy, cannabis and coca plants. I mean, making them illegal. Look at the black market worlds in cocaine, heroin and cannabis now, all because they banned the best pain-killing plants on the planet so they can control pain relief. And it's probably the best business on the planet, pain relief. People will give their last dollar for it. So I'm all for all drugs being treated as a health issue, and people given proper health advice, come out of the cupboard, regulated, quality control, analysed so we know what's in it with alcohol. You know, imagine selling alcohol now where you know, you had no idea what you were getting. It would be unheard of. So in many ways the alcohol and tobacco industry have got, you know, things we could copy, I think. For example, anyone's allowed to make alcohol. You can buy all the brews in the supermarket, and you're allowed to grow tobacco. You're not allowed to sell it. So I wouldn't even mind if it got like that. We're allowed to grow our own cannabis, but if you want to sell it, you've got to get a licence.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. It's a human rights issue, and there should be nothing like that banned. And I know that we're here sort of struggling for cannabis law reform, but definitely it needs to go across the board. And yeah, it's unfortunate because prohibition really allows us the rise of a police state. So it allows basically the police to stop us and be swabbing our bloody tongues or whatever as well. It's all a bit crazy. It's done in the pretense or the guise of safety as well. So I sometimes worry that we'll fall back into serious fascism due to concern for safety. Remember that, guys?
Yeah, I don't know if you came down the police station before when we did that little march, but, you know, the inspector, Nicole, said, what did she say? Our job this weekend is to keep it a safe, no, she used another word, a safe, happy weekend, you know. If they want us to be safe, leave us alone, obviously. Let us smoke pot instead of anything else. Yeah. So the police, you know, they're not making the decisions, but the police need to get on board if they're really serious about helping people.
Yeah. Just something else I remembered, we did pick up a lot of stuff while we were there, including, so basically there's
heaps of
magazines, and they're all free. So the industry or the culture there is, full of information, full of all sorts of, it goes beyond information. It's starting to be, I don't know, it's like craft brewing, or, you know, like boutique wineries. It's kind of like really almost focusing on those kinds of markets as well. Which is really fascinating, because once again, when regulation happens or people aren't looking over their shoulder about being arrested, then they can be very open and share information and become more excellent in what they're actually providing. So yeah, the scope or the breadth or the diversity of the cannabis products we were introduced to was immense. And it was really lovely because you could read on them what's in it. And even what fertilisers were used in the growing of the plant.
Yeah.
So that kind of information is extraordinary, especially if you're trying to help yourself with medical as well. You can see exactly what else you're getting.
By the way, no one smoked with tobacco over there. Absolutely everyone smokes straight. You talk about putting tobacco in it, they look at you like, what are you doing? That was interesting, and it's a very bad habit that we picked up in Australia. I think probably from Europe, learning to smoke hash, putting something with it. So people now, young Australians are introduced to pot in a probably a plastic orchie bottle with tobacco in a state of fear. It's a shocking way to begin your whatever journey you have with the cannabis plant. And not long ago, it would have been a serious ritual introducing young people to a cannabis plant, and you'd never put chemical-ridden tobacco in it. So all these little things that will change if we can get it out in the open, regulated.
I was going to say, do you want to talk about Mark Heinrich as well?
Yes. Yeah. We've got a picture of Mark. Mark, a few big, we've been battling. It's the 25th MardiGrass, but certain people have put their life into trying to change the law, and one of them is Mark Heinrich, who died this year. He made a lot of medicine in Canberra, helped a lot of people, put his neck right out there. He wrote to the health minister saying, hey, look, I've healed this woman. Have a look at these photos, It was a nightmare for her. She sent the cops around and busted him. And it was like she felt like she didn't have any choice, it's illegal. I get the way she's thinking, but he was an outstanding man who had serious personal PTSD problems. Cannabis was awesome for him. Anyway, you're going to make me cry now, because I've had a few other good mates die recently. Burry, who died 2 weeks ago, and Dick Hopkins, whose funeral we had here on Wednesday in the hall. All these old hippies are falling over, And it made me think that when you swim against the stream, which is what we're doing, and what a lot of you are doing, we're trying to change the laws, we're going against government policy, it takes its toll. So a thought for Mark, he was a top guy.
Yeah, Mark influenced a lot of people, really. He came to MardiGrass, I think, first in 2008, and met a lot of people here, and has gone on to definitely be someone who is an inspiration and a mentor, and has helped a lot of people around the country. There's people here at this event this weekend who would consider Mark one of the most stalwart and most excellent people they met in cannabis culture. So.
Someone else died, I heard, which is Pepe, the Uruguayan president. I think he died in the last month. Am I right? He was an extraordinary man. Uruguay's got legal cannabis. And he was a revolutionary who became the prime minister or president and stayed in his same little humble house and lived down the bottom of a well for 18 months when he was that was the jail they put him in. So, we'll do that probably. The opening ceremony is in the park this afternoon, and we'll have a minute's silence for victims of Prohibition. But in a way, all those people we just talked about were heavily affected by it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, one of the other things we have in our program this afternoon at 3 o'clock, Eric Rees, who's the filmmaker of Drug Lord, he will be talking about media and drug reporting, but I think he'll probably also maybe show a bit of his film as well. So he's definitely interviewed the Uruguayan president, and I think his new, the focus of his new film is on, is it Ralph? Thank you. The gentleman from Israel who is really the scientist who uncovered the evidence of the cannabinoid system, and basically is really, I guess, the grandfather of all the amazing things that have happened in Israel in the last few decades. Aha!
There he is.
We have even one of the free magazines we picked up in Seattle had all about him.
He's the man who discovered THC. And, it's actually a very good story. I don't know if you can probably get it online, ireadculture.com. And the story on him discovering THC is fantastic. He started getting curious, and he went to the cops in Israel and got heaps of confiscated weed, because always that's tricky for the science people, getting a legal source. Anyway, he got away with it for ages. The Americans came over and took it all, took all his results and trials and everything. You know, just the more I've been involved in this, the more I realise how corrupt it is. You know, how this whole scene's been going on beneath the surface the whole time, of people completely aware it's an amazing medicine. We've got to keep it illegal. We can't let the public get hold of it. And I can't really separate medical and spiritual, because for me, it was a whole spiritual awakening for me, cannabis. And I often think, it's a big part of why they don't want people getting it. You can see what happens. You smoke dope, you become a Nimbinite. So they're pretty scared of that. You think for yourself, you see through a lot of stuff. In the old days, it was called a truth drug, because you do. In a way, you become childlike, and you can see it. And all the crap's out of your head, and you can see clearly. And it's pretty hard to explain. You have to try it for yourself. I hope most of you have.
And probably on that note, seeing our next wonderful speaker has arrived, we should probably say thank you, everybody, for listening to our little holiday sideshow.
Thank you.
Really, truly, we Australians are amongst the luckiest people in the world. So even visiting the rich North America